Hi students, welcome to lesson number 12, which is a very important topic and it is on research design. And here we are going to discuss about what is the meaning of research design, need of research design, importance of research design and the elements that are required for research design. Now, a brief introduction. A research design is a kind of blueprint that you prepare before actually carrying out research. It is a systematically prepared outline stating the manner in which you plan to carry out your research. You may like to contemplate your research in terms of two phases, namely the empirical phases and the analytical phases. The two phases remain in your mind together, while in practical terms you may plan your research in terms of a phase of data collection and another phase of analyzing the data. Theoretical orientation and conceptual models in your mind help you to decide the kind of data you would collect and to some extent also how you would collect them. Later, while analyzing your data, again your theoretical and conceptual understanding of social reality in general will guide you to classify the data and to recognize a pattern in order to explain and present your findings. The objectives of this lesson would be where the students will be able to understand or try to make out or explain the meaning of research design, develop a research design and undertake a research study by formulating a research design. Now, we will try to understand what is the meaning of research design and what are the various definitions. It is important for you to understand that developing a research design is a challenge to the researcher, because the success of his or her research work is dependent on the research design. Any research is valid when its conclusions are true and verifiable. It is reliable when the findings are repeatable. Reliability and validity of the research require the planning of inquiry, that is, the detailed strategy of how the research will be conducted. Decisions regarding what, when, where, how much, by what means concerning an inquiry or a research study constitute a research design. The term design means drawing an outline or planning or arranging details. So, it is a process of making research related decisions before the situation arises. Research design is planning a strategy of conducting research. It plans as to what is to be observed, how it is to be observed, when and where it is to be observed, why it is to be observed, how to record observation, how to analyze the interpretation observation and how to generalize. Research design is thus a detailed plan of how the goals of research will be achieved. As there are various definitions for research design, we will understand some of them. According to 𝗘𝗍𝗪, defines research design as a plan, structure, strategy of investigation purporting to answer research questions and control variance. The term plan implies the overall scheme or program of the research, embracing an outline of what the researcher intends to do, ranging from the stage of formulation of hypothesis and their working implications to the final stage of data analysis. The term structure intends to define the research study in a more specific way as the outline. The term strategy is used in a more specific way than plan, and it involves the methods and techniques for collection of data and then analysis so as to achieve the precise research objectives. According to Miller, research design is the planned sequence of the entire process involved in conducting a research study. According to P.V. Young, research design is a logical and systematic planning and directing of a piece of research. Seltz and others defines research design as a catalogue of the various phases and facts relating to the formulation of a research effort. It is an arrangement of the essential conditions for collection and analysis of data in a form that aims to combine relevance to research purpose with economy with a procedure. Thus, it becomes amply clear from the given definitions that research design is nothing but a scheme of work to be undertaken by a researcher at various stages, facilitating the research work in a systematic manner and conducting the various operations methodologically. Research design acts as a guide to achieve the goal of the researcher step by step in a calculative and conscious manner within a prescribed time limit and specified cost. If the study is or not completed within the time limit, it will not only increase the cost, but also cause a series of other problems associated with research affecting the quality of research. Therefore, the challenge of a research design is to translate the general scientific model into a practical research operation. Research design will refer to the entire process of planning and carrying out a research study. It involves the arrangement of conditions and observation in such a way that alternative answers to the questions taken up in the research are ruled out, containing a built-in system of checks against all the factors that might affect the validity of the research outcome. Keeping in view the 𝗧𝗧 design decisions, the researcher may split the overall practical research design into the following phases. The sampling design, dealing with the method of selecting items to be observed for the given study. And second one is the observational design, specifying the conditions under which the observations are to be made. And the third is the statistical design, taken into account the quantitative and statistical aspects of the design, which concerns with the questions of how many items are to be observed and how the information and data gathered are to be analyzed. And the fourth one, the operational design, relating to the use of specific technique for the operation of the model already designed. It deals with the techniques by which the procedures specified in the sampling, statistical and observational design can be carried out. Now, we will understand what is the need for research design. Research is a scientific investigation of a problem for which we need a systematic planning of research. So, for a successful research, we need a research design because it includes first one, the formulation of a strategy to resolve a particular question. Second, the collection and recording of information and evidences. Third, the processing and analysis of this data and their interpretation, and the publication of results. A research design states structure and process of conducting a research process. Thus, it shows a path to researcher without which he may be lost or confused as to what next he has to take up. More so, it also takes care of budget and time frame of the research study. All this planning can only make a research study a success story. Now, what are the basic purposes of research design? We can derive two basic purposes. The first one is to provide answer to the research questions. Second, to control variance. Indeed, these research purposes are achieved by the researcher himself, not by the research design. So, the first purpose, a research is designed to enable the researcher to arrive at an objective, accurate, valid and economic solution of the given problem to the maximum possible extent. Since scientific research begins with a provisional supposition in the form of a hypothesis, the major purpose of the design is to provide the research with a valid test of the hypothesis on the basis of empirical evidences obtained by the researcher by utilizing the least amount of money, manpower and time, and maximum possibility of its being approved by other investigators engaged in the given area of investigation. By providing a sort of blueprint for the variation of hypothesis, presuming the relation between two or more variables on the basis of empirical facts and by directing the process of observation in terms of determining the facts relevant to the research problem, how and where to look for them and how many observations to make, the research design becomes indispensable on the part of any researcher in scientific investigation. Furthermore, it also indicates whether or not the variables of the research are to be manipulated or selected, what specific values of the manipulated or selected variables are to be utilized in the scientific investigation, and how a conceptual variable can be converted into observable facts. Research design also makes specification of the method to be adopted for manipulation of the independent variable and for measurement of the dependent variable, along with suggesting the ways by which the collected data for research are to be analyzed and determining the level of statistical analysis appropriate to the research situation. The design of an experiment and its analysis are interrelated. Indeed, it is often said that one should not do an experiment without knowing how it is to be analyzed. This statement of Rakin and Rouch not only applies to experimental design, but also holds good for all kinds of designs of research. And the second purpose of research is to control the effects of potentiality, relevant independent variables on the behavior of the research subjects. It merely facilitates the process of obtaining answer to relevant questions in the research study and enables the investigator to exercise control over experimental, extraneous and error variance pertaining to particular research problem being studied. The validity of the research findings would be affected if these variables are not controlled. In the real world, any observed event of behavior is influenced by a multiplicity of facts and events. The behavior being a real world event involving overt or covert responses by one or more actors to a task of situation, and task being any impending sequence of acts guided by a goal. Both behavior and task involves a complexity of events. Each of these may be used as an independent variable. Of course, consideration of a variable as an independent one depends upon the researcher's interest or the nature of the research problem. For example, job satisfaction, educational achievement, individual production, restriction of birth rate and similar other effects are explainable on the basis of the influence of a number of related or unrelated facts and events. But it is not possible to incorporate each one of these variables within the same research undertaking. On the contrary, a researcher must keep himself restricted only to a limited number which are used as the more explicitly relevant variables in a given research. If they happen to be active variables, their values are deliberately changed and thereby they are manipulated in order to be controlled. Now, we will try to understand the characteristic features of a good research design. Designing a research, particularly in the field of social sciences, is very complex, as a selection of a method or methods of logic and planning of the design was not always guarantee sound results. As a blueprint, the research design may at best be only tentative and useful to the extent of providing the researcher with a series of guideposts to keep him ahead in the right direction. Although every design has its own strengths and weakness, and simultaneously the possibility of a single perfect research design is difficult. A good research design is often believed to possess characteristic features like flexibility, appropriateness, efficiency, economically sound and so on. A design which maximizes bias and maximizes the reliability of data is constructed as a good design. Similarly, the design giving the smallest experimental error is considered to be the best design, and the design yielding maximal information covering various aspects of a problem is construed as the most efficient design, because it is appropriate to the research problem. Hence, consideration of a design as good depends too much upon the objective of the research problem and also the nature of the problem under investigation. A single design can never serve the purpose of all types of research problem, because what appears to be suitable in one case may be lacking in one respect or the other. So, in the context of some other research problem, a good research design should always fulfill the following 4 conditions, that is objectivity, reliability, validity and generalizability of the findings. Now, what is objectivity? The findings are said to be objective when they pertain to the method of data collection and the scoring of the responses. The objectivity in respect of the procedure may be judged by the degree of agreement between the final scores assigned to various persons by more than one independent observer. The more the agreement among the observers, the more objective are the observation, recording and evaluation of the responses. Therefore, a good research design should permit fairly objective measuring instrument in which every observer visualizing a performance comes to the same conclusion. Now, what is reliability? The question of reliability of knowledge is usually raised when the presence of a problem arouses the knower a demand not only for something more than mere conjecture, but for something for which it shall be useful in a given situation and perhaps in other similar situations. Reliable knowledge means any claim that is substantiated as trustworthy for a given purpose. Now, what is validity? Validity implies self-consistency or absence of self-contradiction. It is identified with formal truth or self-consistency. A valid reasoning conforms to the rules of correct reasoning. It is that type of reasoning where conclusions automatically follow from the premises legitimately. And what is generalizability? It means the degree is known in terms of the replicability and reproducibility of the findings in spite of different measures and settings respectively. Now, we will try to know what are the basic terminologies used in research design. It is essential to get familiar with some term for clear and better understanding of the design, and they are: the first one, it is the factors. The independent variable of an experiment are known as factor of the experiment. An experiment always has at least one factor. Second one is the levels. A level is a particular value of an independent variable. An independent variable has at least 2 levels. For example, if we are intended to see the effect of reward on verbal learning, then reward is a factor and it has 2 levels, reward or no reward. Third, it is a treatment. It refers to a particular set of experimental conditions. For example, in 2 into 2 factorial experiment, the subjects are assigned to 4 treatments. Now, we will understand what are the elements of research design. There are various elements. The first one, it is a selection of research problem. Second one, selection of units of analysis. Third, choice of variable. Fourth, identification of relationships. Fifth, the nature of causal relationships. Sixth, operationalization of concepts and definitions. Seventh, formulation of hypothesis. Now, we will understand each one. The first one, the selection of research problem. As regards the selection of topic for research, anything that is social and empirical is a relevant problem for social research. the factors which affect the decision on selection of topic in social sciences are: the first one, the structure and state of a discipline; second, social problems; third, other determinants like the availability of grants for particular themes, the popularity and prestige of the particular area of research, public interest and motivation of the researcher, etc., and practical consideration. The second element is the selection of unit of analysis. Determination of the units of analysis is a key factor in social research. In general, the purpose of the study dictates the selection of the appropriate unit of analysis. The objects or events or entities under investigation are referred to as unit of analysis in social sciences. The other element is the choice of variable. Since a social scientist is primarily interested in studying the relationship among some characteristics or properties of the observed units, which are subject to variation over cases, over time, or over both cases and time, it is necessary for a researcher to decide which variable should be the focus of research. Explanatory variables are known as a variable under focus. They are of two types. The first one is dependent and second one is independent. The former one is a variable the researcher is interested in explaining and predicting, and the second one, dependent variable, is a presumed effect. The independent variable is a presumed cause. The extraneous variables are those which are not the direct focus of research. Those are of two types, controlled and uncontrolled. The control variables are held constant or prevented from varying during the course of observation. Apart from the following classification of the variables, a typology of quantitative and qualitative variable is also made. Whereas, a quantitative variable implies values or categories consisting of numbers, and qualitative variables represent certain qualities, attributes or discrete categories. The other element is the identification of relationships. In real terms, very many social researchers directly aim at developing and testing relationships apart from gaining familiarity of a phenomena or description of a communities or groups or exploration of a situation or event. However, on the whole, research findings largely depend on particular anticipated relationships. Therefore, identification of the anticipated relationship and the guiding theoretical premises assume greater importance. The other element is the nature of causal relationship. Causal relationship constitute the heart of scientific understanding. These are very much required for purposes of explanation and prediction. So, in order to establish causality, the social scientists take help of three types of evidences, that is association, direction and no speciousness. Statistical association such as a pattern of change in one variable is related to the other variable indicates the former is the cause. Causal relationships are determined in terms of strong and weak associations. Another criterion required for establishing a causal connection between events is that the direction of influence should be from cause to effect. In other words, cause must precede its effect. The third criterion needed to establish a causal relationship between events is non-speciousness, which implies that in order to inter a causal relationship from an observed correlation, there should be sufficient reason to believe that no hidden factors have contributed to a specious relationship. Ideally, the researcher must show that the connection between the variables is held constant. Another element is the operationalization of concepts. Since concepts serve a number of important functions, clarity and precision in the usage of concepts are to be achieved by definitions which must contain the distinctive characteristics or qualities of the phenomena under investigation. Concepts, in order to be operationally existent, should be established through operational definitions, which are instrumental in specifying the contextual meaning of concepts and providing the framework of their application. Briefly stated, the operational definitions serve as a link between the conceptual theoretical level and the observational empirical level. And the last element is the formulation of hypothesis. In order to state the research questions in a precise manner, so as to give clear indication of what is to be observed and what kind of information will be gathered, the research questions must be stated in the form of hypothesis. So, hypotheses are tentative generalizations which are expected, but based on unconfirmed relationship between two or more variables. To summarize, research design is a detailed plan as to how to do the research. The aim of research design is to give answer to research problem and control variance. It ensures against wasteful expenditure of money, time and energy. To design is to plan, that is, designing is a process of making decisions before the situation arises. It is thus a process of deliberate anticipation directed towards bringing an expected situation under control. The task of designing research is a sequential process involving a number of clearly delineated steps. There are some variations in the number of steps, their names and their sequence suggested by different writers, but design of research is the most important aspect and inevitable part of the social research. Thank you.